Hi, I'm Jon Croft with Cultural Warfare with Jon Croft, and we're going to have Marcus Pittman coming in a minute to talk about lore TV and the responsibility to improve faith-based film. I title it this because I feel a responsibility to improve faith-based film, and I'm sure that Marcus does as well. We're hoping to um, discuss this briefly. We might end up discussing it for half a minute, half an hour to an hour, and let's just get into it. So, as I said, I feel this responsibility, this innate responsibility to improve faith-based film. Why? Because I'm coming in from the secular world into faith-based, and what I'm seeing is a lot of, um, I guess you could call it uh, inability to curate and to create entertainment and art. And so it feels as though there's a lot of people who do not uh, have schooling on this or experience on this in the faith-based world. Well, hello, sir.
Hey man, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah,
Uh, I'm
man.
I'm new to this, so I've been a filmmaker for about 15 years and started doing this effort at Media Moses and now Cultural Warfare because Media Moses is an effort to change faith-based and conservative media and make it, more updated, and also to remind our community that marketing is really important. We think of it as a bad word. I
Yeah.
did my entire time doing art. I couldn't stand
Right.
marketing, right? And then there's the
Right.
marketing people who ruin the marketing of your film and mismarket it. So Media Moses is an effort not just to do marketing, but to get us away from Hollywood, as in Exodus, right? This is the Moses part of it.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Exodus out of Hollywood into a new place where we can worship God in the wilderness, right? Which is really our duty before God to do our best to make this new nation, right? So our culture is a big part of that.
Yeah, what
So
do you do? What do you do besides the podcast?
well, I write. I'm in efforts to do a lot of different things. I have 4 shows planned on YouTube and all this stuff. Cultural Warfare is my first one because it's just me basically talking about my beliefs about culture. And a lot of people don't even understand how to do culture creation and all this stuff.
Right.
They call it the culture war, right? Because they have no understanding. The culture war is a political term. It's not even having anything to do with culture.
Right.
A lot of people don't even know this. Like
Right.
they don't know that the history of the culture war is a political term from Prussia and Germany that was about co-opting culture for the sake of these new progressive movements, right? The left and the
Right.
right wing. And so that's a political thing. I don't care about that. What I care about is entertainment and real culture and values, right? So
Yeah.
it's not that I don't care about politics. I do. But my effort here is to really get us to doing things like Tolkien and Lewis did years ago, right?
Right.
After World War One, World War Two, there's this decimation to our culture. And so they're there to kind of start rebuilding the culture and reminding us why all these things are happening. There's this hunger for power in as a theme in Lord of the Rings. And so our desire, our need really is to find peace in God. It's not so much to have earthly power. And
Right.
so these are just some of the themes that Tolkien and Lewis are reminding us of. But to your question, and by the way, I should be asking you questions.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate you, brother. Um, what I'm doing is a variety of things. I found that community is really lacking. So just the understanding of what community is really anemic right now in our culture because people aren't giving into community. Like back in the Greek days, it was like plant seeds of trees, you will never sit under the shade of these trees, right? And so they understood that community was a matter of giving. It wasn't a matter of receiving. It was a matter of
Right.
just building into and never expecting things in return. And so we've lost so many of our civilizational values that we don't even know what community is anymore. We go online, we go on social media, and we just we don't give anything. It's all about getting resources. It's not about giving to people and learning from people and having relationships with people and all of this. And so that's what community is supposed to be, you know?
Yeah.
And so I found out by running a local film networking community, which is called Film Bar Mondays. It comes out of Atlanta. I learned that we just don't have a film community in my local area, which is the Tampa Bay area. And for me, this is shocking because I came from going to LA and learning about how to pitch and learning about how to do all these things and accomplish these things. And it's always about community, always.
Right. Yeah.
So, like, whether you're having a lunch or whether you're having a party or whether you're having a mixer at a film festival, right? All of these things are about meeting and talking and pitching and, being relaxed and having relationships. And this is none of what's going on in my local community. We have like networking meetings, but all of those things are about sitting in a classroom and listening to some guy drone on about how he made a film back in 1985
Right.
or something. And we're supposed to learn something from this guy. And then
Right.
what, right? This is not really a community, you know?
Right.
So then I went up to Atlanta where they have a very large film community and Film Bar Mondays is there. And I learned from them, oh, this is where you hang out at a bar, you just hang out with directors and PAs and actors and you just start talking, and you start making relationships. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is more normal, you know?
Yeah.
And so I brought it down here to Tampa Bay, and a lot of people did not come out. It was difficult to give them the vision. After 2020 happened, everybody left. And that's when I started getting into faith-based film because I realized, oh my goodness, this is our society is worse, far worse off than I thought. Like I was just trying to sell product to AFM. Like that's what I was trying to do. And I got pretty close a few times and I was learning about how to pitch and I was getting directors together locally. And what I would do is I would try to have directors in my back pocket where it was like, we can do something, right? But what we need to do is find a distributor first, because that's the
Right.
way I think. And so I went out to AFM and was trying to get distributors to give me what they want. Like, what are you looking for? What kind of
Right.
genre? What kind of protagonist, antagonist, plot, anything you want. And I'll just bring that to my directors and we'll just create it for you in a year. Like, so it's kind of a reverse backwards way of thinking, but that's just the way I think. But then what I eventually realized was, where's my artistic vitality? I'm always like trying to make something and appease somebody else, right? But that was what almost everybody was doing at AFM. It was
Yeah.
always like, well, let's do what the market wants. Let's give people what they need and what they want. And good will come out of that, right? There's the cream rises, and this is true, right? But what are these screenwriters always trying to make? They're trying to make something that a market already wants.
Right.
So I realized I was watering down my artistic vitality. And then by 2020, I was like, not only am I watering down myself, but I'm seeing that the entire community is watered down. It's not really doing anything vital. And the Christian community is even worse. They don't even understand how to make good films. So now I started doing media emojis because I felt like by 2022 I had done a podcast about making better film and featuring local filmmakers, and this is called the Film Bar Review on Spotify or whatever. And so I realized we need to make a new film movement the way they did after World War II, like the French New Wave, Italian neorealism, all this stuff, right? Because why? Because they have new technology. they've been changed as a society. Like they have to heal from all the struggles of war. And the only way to do that is through new art, right? So these guys pick up a camera. They don't even have sync sound and all this stuff. They're just shooting stuff black and white. They don't even have lights, right? So it's like, why aren't we doing this after 2020? Because 2020 was like a war. I mean, it
Right.
was shocking to many
Right.
people, to me, you know? And so, but when things in social media are the way they are, we can't just make what we want.
Right.
So people are feeling that kind of like pressure,
That's right.
and it's not coming out through the normal Hollywood avenues, because they're part of this whole thing.
Right.
So there needs to be another group of people. And my hope is that it's the Christian community. You know, we need another group of people who want new art, who need kind of a new expression. And we called it in our podcast, we called it Conwave, which is like conservative new wave kind of thing. But the idea was to make it black and white with little DSLR cameras shooting down a street corner and small stories that mean something to us, right? And so it's very much in the French New Wave style. But that was just an idea. And so from there, I understood that just like in the past, a lot of my own films didn't seem to make much of a difference. I think a lot of great filmmakers are out here. We have product, but we can't make a difference because why? Because we don't have either a film community that can raise up our profile in our local community, or we don't have distributors and people looking for us anymore. Like we don't have people looking for Kevin Smiths and, you
We
know,
are.
well, you are, yes. Well, this is why you're here, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
We can talk about this. Yeah. Uh, yeah. Well, I mean, I think what you said about like Kevin Smith is true. We don't have people, we don't really have an incubation system for independent filmmakers, especially in the conservative and Christian space. So that's why we built Lore, LOOR.TV. And really, we just found because, you know, I was head of advertising for the agency that did PureFlix's marketing. And we'd spend $1 million a month
wow.
advertising to 35-year-old women, like the worst movies you could possibly imagine.
Hallmark
And
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, Hallmark, Lifetime, that sort of style. And my job was to like, take out any guns out of a trailer or anything that might offend these women. And I did that for a year until I just couldn't do it anymore. I was like, this
Yeah.
is just, and everybody's donating all this money to PureFlix because they're like, we're the Christian film company and we're protecting you from, sex and violence and all this sort
Right.
of stuff.
It's what we're
Which,
supposed to do. Yeah.
yeah, that's what we're
Good
supposed to
people.
do.
Yeah.
And so people are like supporting the mission, but there was never any incentive to actually take that money and then build something uh, that served as an example to what they're telling people they want to do.
Right.
Um, and so uh, I was like, well, one, we need to build something that allows filmmakers to have the freedom to be able to make what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that doesn't exist right now.
Mm.
Hollywood, the budgets are too expensive to be able to make what you want. There's too
Right.
much risk,
It's too
financial
risky.
risk.
Yep.
Yeah, and so when you spend $250 million on a Marvel movie, like that movie's got to make a return,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or at least break even. Like the hope
Right.
is that it breaks even and they can sell merch
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. But like it's got to at least break even. And um, what I found was like if you look through like I love studying television history and
Yeah.
IPs and stuff
I
like
like your
that.
posts on Substack, by the way. Great
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. So I love that. And then you look at like MTV, HBO, Food Network, Comedy Central, all
I
these
liked what you
cable.
were talking about with Lorne Michaels and SNL. That was good because you were
Yeah,
talking about an incubator. That was
That's
really
right.
good stuff.
So all these cable companies started with some sort of incubation, like they were made to be an incubator, like Food Network. When they started, they had one kitchen, and every cook would use the same kitchen, and
Yeah,
the
that's how
the
to do
kitchen
it.
smelled of dead fish because there wasn't enough refrigerators. I mean, like that's how Food Network got built, and now it's $1 billion brand. Same
Hmm.
thing with like MTV. They have like one place, and they just there was only
Yeah,
like 100 music videos that were ever made when they made the network. And so and then of course the best example, as you said, is Lorne Michaels and Saturday Night Live, which
brilliant.
is 50-year-old institution. It's coming up on the 50th season this year.
Yep.
Um, this 50-year-old institution where every week, uh, Lorne Michaels has these comedians fail live on TV week
Yep.
after week, 90% of the time. All of the sketches are bad. But every now and
And it's
then,
great.
through that process, you get like a Wayne's World, or you
Yeah,
get what's I think one of the most recent ones that was successful was
there's so few now.
the
Yeah.
Tom Hanks David S. Pumpkin sketch that
Um,
resulted in a animated cartoon special.
oh, I
Um
missed that. I haven't been
yeah,
watching them in so long now. I just gave up.
yeah. So that, but like every now and then you get that, but you also get Will Ferrell's and Tina Fey's and Adam Sandler's that go off to do multi-billion-dollar projects and stuff on
Yeah,
their own.
they're great.
And we don't have that because, one, I think conservatives and the faith-based movement, they always tend to think like money is power. So if I spend a lot of money on a project, I'm automatically going to get the
So
eyeballs
foolish.
because
So
of all the
foolish.
attention that comes
Yeah.
from, you know, but if you look back on history, you can't just make a new IP by writing a big check,
No.
right? Like
Throw
like they
money at it,
all,
right? That's just
yeah, just throw money at it. It's like, and people forget that there's 100 years of comic books that resulted in the
hmm.
Marvel movies we have today. It took
Yeah.
100 years to be able to get there. And so, that's a massive problem. But if study the history of the underground comic book movement,
Oh
study
yeah.
how, Stan Lee had to like fight, the Supreme Court and all this other sort of stuff, all these lawsuits against comic books being bad and
Right.
endangering the
Right.
kids. So
Corrupting of
so
the minds of the children.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so and then you can see also in the comic book industry, the people that left the comic, Marvel got too big, DC got too big, so they started like Spawn, which was independent comic
Yes.
book,
Independent. Yep.
and then I believe I could be wrong, but I think
Image
like the
comics.
same, like The Walking Dead came from that same uh
Yeah.
publisher that started Spawn,
Right.
so you have just tremendous, like it's demonstrably true that all the
Hmm.
big IP brands that we have today started on a very small scale
Yes.
in some sort of independent way. And
Yep.
anybody who's not trying to create that is wasting their time. And any investor who's investing in flashy film projects are wasting their time.
Pretty
But
much. Pretty much. Yeah.
because, as you said, you have to invest in this community.
Yeah,
Uh,
you really do. You
Um,
really do.
and that's sort of what we're doing at Lore, is where we've created a platform where the monthly subscriber spends their monthly subscription dollars funding movies and TV shows.
Hmm.
And then on the other hand, because the artist is pitching directly to the subscriber, we kind of get out of the way and just tell the filmmaker to make whatever you want. We have like no nudity
Right.
policy and
Yeah, you got to
no,
have some policies there, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Like, there's no neutrality, and then
It's
we have a no,
reasonable. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like it's a
reasonable.
reasonable
But as far as like violence and adult language and masculine content,
for adults,
yeah,
like
adult films, because I believe that conservatives, like when the kids go to bed, they watch Fox News
of
or
course.
they watch Survivor, right? Like
Hmm.
so, the it's foolish to say that every show a 5-year-old and a 95-year-old has to sit on the same couch and watch.
Right.
It's just not true.
Well, we
Christian
have this thing in
stories,
scripture, right? It's the weak in faith and the strong in faith. And we
right?
don't want to put a stumbling block before others who are weak in faith.
Right.
and we want to accept the people who are strong in faith. And so
Right.
there's this mutual love we have for each other. That's what we're supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah. And they're not supposed to stay weak in faith, right? I always
Oh,
say
yeah.
they're
Ooh.
not they're not supposed to stay in pure flesh, right?
Ah,
So uh and
don't hurt my
and
feelings. My feels.
and yeah, and so that like that's the and so what we said is like, look, let's just give filmmakers freedom
Mm-hmm.
and just to break all the rules. We have an animated cartoon where teddy bears reenact the most violent Old Testament Bible
I think I've
stories.
seen that trailer. It's great.
Yeah, it's barely biblical, and that show's really popular. The second episode is over halfway funded right now, and
Good.
it's going to be on Ehud. If you know the Old Testament story of Ehud, it's
Oh,
about the fat.
yes. That's the
And,
roles and the, yeah. That,
yeah,
hmm.
and the fat gets stuck in his stomach and
Oh,
pours out, and so all blood is stuffing and guts is stuffing,
hmm.
and um
Is there going
uh
to be a tent peg one? The tent peg.
there is, yeah,
Oh, nice.
yeah.
There you go.
So I think that's the third episode actually.
Very important. You don't want to miss the tent
So
peg one. That's
Yeah, so now like our main goal is just finding the audience. Say, look, we have all these filmmakers here. They're fed up with the faith-based films just like you are, and
yes.
nobody's paying attention to them, that nobody's watching this content. And so now we're just encouraging subscribers to subscribe to Lore and to spend a few months funding movies and TV shows on there.
Yeah.
And the more stuff gets funded, the more new stuff gets presented to be funded. And we started with no content on our platform and just funding content. And then now we have about 55 pieces of content you can watch on our platform,
Good.
from documentaries, documentary series, first season of a cartoon show called Florida Lee, which is really funny and great.
Was that an AI animation?
It's not AI generated. It's basically AI as a tool. So a
Yes.
lot of the
Yes.
background artwork is generated with AI, and then a lot of the voice acting is using like AI filters on it
Cool.
to save costs on those sort of things.
I'm
Yeah, I
not
think the guy
personally
did.
like, I'm not personally scared of AI taking over.
No, me
I
neither.
think of it as a tool, basically.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's like saying you're scared of what South Park is doing with
Cameras or
construction
something.
paper. You
Technology.
know, yeah, it's like you can use anything to tell stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we want to be, we like to say we want to be the first platform that openly promotes AI as a storytelling
Oh, cool.
mechanism. And so how artists do that, they're going to come up with ways, and I'm excited about what that allows for them to do.
Yeah.
One of our shows is called Feltboard Sunday School. If you remember like the old
Oh,
Sunday school felt boards, so it's like an old lady telling Bible stories with like felt board cutout images.
right.
Like, so we kind of call
Charming.
it like the Sunday school version of South Park.
Cool.
But it's all the felt board images are generated with like Midjourney, right?
Nice. Oh, okay. Cool.
So there's but the reason we have those shows is because we give people the freedom to make it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and no one else will do that.
Right.
Go and pitch an AI generated show to any faith-based streaming network platform, and you're most likely going to get turned down. They won't even hear you out because they
Yeah.
got to work with the unions, right?
Oh, yeah.
Chosen big union. And so there's all these rules and
Mm-hmm.
restrictions that really make that impossible.
Not
And
very
so
fun.
our goal is just to create really just a sandbox, and then to really develop the next new IPs out of this sandbox that we've created.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it's going really well. Yeah. So,
Yeah. That was one of the big concerns I had when I saw your platform is everybody kind of relies on either a brand or a IP or something that sets them apart. And what I saw that set you guys apart was kind of the what would you call it, like a hybrid between crowdfunding and like Netflix. And so
yeah.
that's kind of the way I looked at what I saw like behind the counter, the technology that you guys were using,
Yeah. We
like
say it's
this both
Netflix
of
and
these things.
Kickstarter's based baby.
Yes, yes.
So,
I like that because I actually am a fan of Angel's platform. I think that Angel Studios, one of the things they do well is that they really build fan bases
yeah.
and they do focus on marketing. I mean, the Harmon brothers are marketing guys. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
really. And then they did
I would
the
I would say primarily Angel is a marketing company.
Yes.
Like that they're really good at that.
Yeah.
And so like they know how, and now a lot of their films are raising P&A for theater runs and stuff like that.
Yes. Which I'm
Um,
actually okay with. I'm good with that.
yeah, I think I think it's a great idea, and
Daily Wire
it's
is going theatrical now.
yeah, that's fine. But I think we also need to figure out ways to build up artists before they're ready to
Oh
make
yeah.
that theatrical run.
You do
So
have to be ready.
and in order for that to happen, the artists have to bring with them a built-in audience. You
Right.
know,
Right.
the goal is that you don't have to spend a lot of money on marketing. Like
Yeah.
that, like right? Like so like that's organic viral advertising at its finest
That
where
that would
you
be
don't
nice.
spend money. Yeah, you don't spend like so but the way to do that is to build out franchises and IP that have sort of generational audiences attached to them.
Yeah.
Like, I like you see a Star Wars movie, like Star Wars has such giant awareness
Yeah.
that a lot of that fuels itself. They do spend a lot of money on marketing, and that helps too. But there's this but the marketing is able to capture the already pre-existing audience and stuff that and right now we don't have that because our
No. We can
pre-existing
never have that again.
yeah, our pre-existing Christian audience is all Lifeway Christian bookstore shoppers, and
Yeah.
those bookstores don't exist anymore. So we're circulating those email lists that were generated through that time, and
Mm.
now these people are in their 50s and 60s.
We need a
Right?
Lifeway sitcom where they're going into the store to work. Let's
Yeah,
sell these books knickknacks today, Sally.
yeah, our precious moment
They'll
contest where
sell out.
yeah. So yeah, but the interesting thing is, and I think you alluded to this first, is that the surprising lack of desire there is, especially
It's
with those with
shameful.
investment capital, to actually be able to make the shift that's required. And when you look at
Yeah.
like Gen Z, right? Like they're super conservative now. They're
We
very
have to
strongly
get the Gen
conservative.
Zs. We have to. Yeah.
Donald Trump just interviewed Logan Paul, Logan Paul interviewed Donald Trump. Aiden Ross, who's a kick streamer, which most people probably don't even know what kick streaming is. It's a kick streamer, had 500,000 people watching his interview with Donald Trump, all
That's
young
something.
people,
Yeah.
all Gen Z. And those guys don't go to the theater as much because they're way more willing to put their money behind artists they care about and
They're too
represents
busy
them.
making their next meme. They're too busy
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Yeah, and so we have to build platforms that allows for movies and TV shows to be told in ways that that audience will support it.
yeah,
And it might not be the theater. It might be,
no.
streaming or crowdfunding or that sort of thing. I think
Mhm.
that's going to be the next shift uh in entertainment. So,
Yeah, it's going to have to be. I mean, there's really no way around that. The technology is going that direction.
yeah.
However, I am kind of an old school believer in face-to-face community, and I think that I'm hoping that there can be a movement again that reinvigorates the desire to actually have face-to-face relationships. But I think that's frankly the church. The church has got to do that.
Yeah.
And when the church has been failing to do that, especially for men, and I find that like you were talking about an incubator, I actually did an article, or not an article, but I did a podcast episode on this because it was you who inspired me to talk about Lauren Michaels and the incubator.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I do know about is improv comedy and actors enough to know it's just beautiful what they do. And so when you
Yeah.
watch great comedians doing improv, like you were saying, on a weekly basis, they're failing, right? And I'm like, this is a good thing, right? Because
Yeah.
when you
And
see guys doing improv, it's like
I
they're
think
just
like
having fun. Like you want them to do that,
yeah, like
you know?
a lot of people complain about how unfunny a lot of Saturday Night Live is. And like you'll see 95% of their sketches just bomb every time. And I think Lorne Michaels is smart enough to know that that sketch is gonna fail,
Hmm.
but he puts it on the air anyway because he wants to give the artists, the performers, a backbone.
Well,
And
he
and
comes from an
so
old
it's
school, the old school of Hollywood, where stars are people that you know, right? They're like
yeah,
your next door neighbor. They're somebody that you know. They're like your friend from high school, and he's like, I'm going to do this really dumb thing. Watch me while I do this. Hold my
yeah,
beer, right? And he
right,
just fails utterly, and everybody's cracking up laughing. Nobody
yeah,
cares.
right,
That's just a different
right.
era, right?
And so like that whole improv comedy where you have like Second City and you have Upright Citizens Brigade and like all
Hmm.
these improv comedy clubs. Um,
Kids in the Hall.
Kids in the Hall, yeah.
Great
So yeah,
stuff.
you have all those those where you're Stephen Colbert, Steve Carell,
Hmm.
Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Will Ferrell. They all came from these, smoky improv comedy clubs.
Yep.
And so Lorne Michaels has developed this system to take people from these comedy clubs and to kind of give them a platform. And so I kind of see YouTube as that comedy club.
Yeah.
And then so now
Yeah.
it's like, okay, well, how do we get people off of YouTube and making stuff that might be a step or two above YouTube, but not
Hmm.
quite Hollywood level yet? And like have them build a name for themselves in front of a a very directed audience that's
Right.
looking for that content. And so that's what lore is. And we've been successful with it so far. And I think the plan is just to continue to grow and scale and raise capital and investment to really uh, turn lore into a national brand.
Well, I think what you said about IP, building the next big IP for the Christian community, I think there's something there because what I look at a lot is I'm a big planner. Like I'm a big like, let's make a master plan. You have a plan B, plan B, C, plan D. You don't ever expect any of them to work. You just kind of like throw everything at the wall. But what you do is you have good plans, right? And
Yeah,
so to me, IP is Hollywood. That's what Hollywood is.
right,
And obviously everyone wants built-in IP, but it just comes from making good art and then whatever hits hits. And then you're trying to control this IP, right? So you cannot avoid the artistic challenge. The artistic challenge is just to empower artists. Like you said, you give them freedom, right? You have to empower talented artists to build that IP. But
yeah,
also, here's a really important thing that we have not been utilizing in the Christian community. We have 1,000 years of good content
yeah,
in Europe. That's great stuff. It's
yeah,
public domain. Why are none of our film directors like, I'm going to make a Shakespeare, which brings out the themes that are more Christian? I'm going
right,
to do Paradise Lost. I'm going to do
yeah,
Dante's Inferno. I'm going to do where are these people? Like they have no knowledge of these things. Like
right. No, they don't. They
What
don't.
about
They
George
don't.
MacDonald?
No, they
George,
don't. They don't have knowledge of these things.
George MacDonald is incredible. He's got tons of books. Like the guy is like eminently like influential because he's influenced the Inklings. So it's like everyone
Right,
talks about the Inklings, but we can't use their stuff. You got to pay
right,
for it. So
right,
it's like, why don't you use George MacDonald's stuff? I've already got a plan to do this, but like remember how I talked about Conwave, but this black and white French New Wave of today? Well, like one great thing about this genre is it can be a period piece, but it's got to be something that's like this is the advantage of black and white, right? Is that you can do things on a more efficient scale, but you can also still do things like a period piece or something that appears very classic, like a classic vibe to it. So you could do something like, his George McDonald's dramas that are basically, they're a little cheesy sometimes, but they're actually not. They're not like Little House on the Prairie or something.
right,
They're
right,
like, they're actually very meaningful, powerful dramas, in these paperbacks he's got. And they're like, on the Scottish moors and on the, in the heather and all this stuff. And it's great stuff. But guess what? You could do all of those as a Western. There's no reason you can't make many of these as Westerns and they can be a lot more prescient today because we're thinking about themes like law and order. We're thinking about themes like civilization. We're thinking about themes like how do you live in a society in peace with other people, right? Because we're
Right.
losing all of this stuff in our society now. So
Right.
we got to dig back into a lot of what makes our civilization work. And I think we have to be purposeful about this. We have to be purposeful about like, well, there's a riot going on somewhere. Like people need to know what made the Roman Empire preferable to what came before it, right?
Right.
Because you had a citizen, you had a Roman citizen. That means you had a Roman military, and then you had people who dealt with citizens. Like you had different kinds of law, you had different kinds of citizens, you had this kind of civilization affects the way all of society behaves. And so today we're talking about stuff like, oh, let's let all these immigrants in and we'll just treat everybody the same. And like, you don't even understand what a citizen is. You know what I mean? Like they've lost all this understanding today. Um, and it's not to get too political, but it's like everybody is losing our understanding of our Western civilization.
Yeah.
And so something like a Western film reminds people, hey, if you were left with a six piece and a criminal, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So like you can't just kind of like rely on some politician who's like, oh, I'll solve all your problems. Like, actually, we have to deal with law and order. We have to deal with nature and how it works, nature and his God, right? And we have to deal with, like, how are we going to behave when somebody's attacking us and harming us, and we don't have a lawman to save us? What are you going to do? You know,
Right.
now Dirty Harry has to show up, right? So these are all like really important themes and subjects to talk about today, and we're just not doing it. Like, and I think a lot of the reason is too is because a lot of these subjects are for men, right? They're not for the feminized church. The
Right.
feminized church isn't used to dealing with these subjects.
Yeah.
They
We
don't
do. We
even
have
think that way.
rom-coms. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't even think that way, you
Yeah.
know?
No, no, I give you like barely biblical for an example was one of those shows where, the filmmaker, he's an accomplished Nickelodeon and Disney animator. He's got the resume, he's got the ability to make the content. And he came to us at a pitchathon and was like, somebody told me I should pitch this to you because you'd be the only guys here that would uh even be interested. And he's like, I just want to do the most violent Old Testament Bible stories told with teddy bears.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
we just thought it was brilliant. Like we were just
Yeah.
like, yes, right now, let's go. Well, I think Jason like went to the hotel lobby and had them print off a contract like immediately, right? Um, but that guy's been trying to pitch that show for years and everybody
Yeah.
ignored it. And for us, it was like an instant duh,
Yep.
right? And I think that, but the reason why they didn't want it is because, well, we don't think mothers are going to want violent cartoons for their kids. And he was like, I don't care what the mothers want. I'm a
Hmm.
dad and I want my kids watching these cartoons because I
Yeah.
want them to learn how to fight and be a man and all the
Right.
masculinity that comes with that. It's the same principle of, Christmas Story with a Red Ryder BB gun, right?
Yeah.
You'll shoot your eye out. And then, eventually the
Oh,
dad got it for the son anyway.
yeah.
And so we've sort of really been cursed with this uh feminine film industry. And nobody talks about it, but like nobody wants to lose money and disrupt that industry. Nobody wants to lose their relationships, their friendships with people in Hollywood who don't really care about them, by the way.
Hmm.
They act cordial. But but then when like you come out with a movie that's really controversial, like Kirk Cameron's Lifemark movie that he did with the Kendrick brothers. I don't know if you know about this, but
Yes. I haven't seen it, but I heard about it.
none of the studios would distribute it,
Oh, I didn't know that.
right? They said they didn't want to touch abortion as a subject.
Oh,
This
I
is the
wonder
same
why.
studios that's distributing Fireproof, which right, and they're
Hmm.
courageous. So, like the same studios don't want anything to do with it. They had to go and release the film at the Fathom event, and they lost a lot of money.
Mm.
Uh, but that's because the Kendrick brothers are at the mercy of what the distributors will let them do.
Right.
And
Right.
so I think it's wrong, especially if you're a Christian, a high net worth Christian, and you're investing in content or you want to invest
Absolutely.
in content. I think it's wrong to continue to perpetuate this sort of system that is
Mm-hmm.
dependent on the Hollywood studios. And instead, we should be investing in building things that disrupt it, just like
Yes.
Uber did the taxi cab industry, right? And so, but disruption isn't a nice word, and people don't like to use it because they're overly sensitive in that
There's
industry.
another word for that. It's art. That's
Yeah, yeah, art should be offensive. It
oh,
has to be. And so
we don't want that.
yeah,
We're so used to our propaganda.
yeah. And they don't have
Propaganda.
and they have
Good
zero
stuff.
cultural influence. They have zero they've been around, Pureflix has been around what, maybe 20 years now, since
Mm-hmm.
2010, so maybe almost coming up on 25 years. And they're working on like the fifth God is Not Dead movie that comes out in September. It's like, what are you guys doing? Like, no one's reading the signs of the times. I remember the weekend after the assassination attempt on Trump, like one Christian streamer was announcing their new like rom-com engagement movie or something. And I
Yeah.
was like, are you guys not reading the room? Like we were on the brink of a civil war, like millimeters away
Mm-hmm.
from a civil war. People are still
They're
like
not paying
really mad
attention.
and trying to figure out what happened and how it happened. And you
Yeah.
guys are announcing a new rom-com movie, right? Like it's just it's ridiculous.
They
And
have to
but
recover from all of that stress.
yeah, but also too, like you have to think that like a lot of these Christian faith-based film institutions are intertwined with the left, whether that's Hollywood, whether it's Sony or Lionsgate, which primarily distributes a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
faith-based film stuff. They're very intertwined and intermingled, and there's a lot of relationships at stake, and but what
Very
and then
sad. Very sad. I think
and
it's you're
there's
you're totally right.
yeah, and there's just tremendous desire to get red carpet invitations,
Mm.
right? I went to a Christian film festival, and you could pay extra money for the ticket.
Oh, I
And
think I might have read this article. Did you put this on one of your articles?
I might have, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like a
So you
pretend
pay
red carpet.
it's like a cosplay red carpet,
Oh
and they
my
have like their
goodness.
own fake paparazzi. And I was like, what the heck is the point of this? Like, this is
Wow.
so stupid.
Selling
Uh,
smoke to these kids.
Yeah, it's
Just
just like, hey guys, see, we can do it too, and we can be accepted by the. It's like, no, you can't. You can't be accepted by
they
Hollywood.
have never been to LA. I bet you. They have never
No,
been, they've
yeah,
never
the only
seen this stuff.
right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
The only way to be accepted by Hollywood is to completely disrupt them and to have them come groveling to you for help.
Well, you have to
Um,
give up your morals and all your decency
or
to be
yeah, or
accepted.
yeah, all that,
You have to
go
do
to a
whatever they
Diddy
say,
party.
like,
Go to
yeah.
you can go to a Diddy party and you can be accepted pretty quickly.
Oh my
But
goodness.
other than that, like there's no real way to be accepted by Hollywood. I don't think the Hollywood system is technically redeemable in the way people say. People are like, well, if I can just make a good movie,
I
make a
believed
lot of
that
money,
5 years ago.
Hollywood. You used to believe that, right? Yeah. I'll just make a good movie. It'll get a good box office run. I'll win the lottery ticket, the box office lottery ticket, and then Hollywood will come and like
Then, right,
do whatever
right.
I want. It's not true. It's
No,
not true. No one who works in Hollywood can do whatever they want. Not I don't even think even like the studio executives can, because they're so entrenched with the government and stuff.
well, I was
So
doing it myself. I was trying as hard as I could to just like get whatever material I could get out there, right? And so eventually you realize it's kind of like you're turning your head like corruption, right? You're just like, I'll just turn my head, right? And as long as I'm being accepted in the relationship, I don't mind about these other things,
yeah,
what they're doing over here,
yeah.
and
I
you
remember
realize that's
years
affecting your heart.
Yeah, I remember years ago with Atlanta, and I lived in Atlanta in that area.
Hmm.
And um I got I found a Craigslist gig for video work to do a reality sizzle reel for the manager of Outcast.
Oh wow.
I was like, oh, that's awesome. And I applied and I got it. And so I went there and like I just followed them around all day or whatever. They got to the evening and they're like, all right, next place we're going is a strip club. And I was like, no, we're not. No, I'm not going to a strip club. And they were like, oh, okay, well, you don't have to go. And then they never contacted me again.
Yeah.
That's what I tell people. I was like, no, you're not going to be accepted by Hollywood, unless you start doing that stuff.
Yeah, you have to, right, exactly.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so
we got
yeah, I
those
was
a big we got a lot of those down here in Florida for sure.
yeah, and
Seedy, very
so
seedy environments, tell you.
yeah, and so the the truth is we just have to want to disrupt the industry and take it over, and it's a lot harder. It's a much bigger financial risk for investors for sure, because uh you know you're it's most likely not going to happen, and when it does happen, the return is probably going to be several years down the line or several
Yeah,
decades down the line, and you might not live long enough to see it. Your grandchildren might get the benefits of the equity, right?
right.
But you have to take those risks to push an industry forward. If you don't,
Hmm.
you're just always going to be this second rate. Yeah, I call Christian movies parodies of parodies because they're basically parodies of Hallmark
It's a
movies,
bad
right?
copy, a bad copy of
Yeah,
Hollywood. Yeah.
yeah. So they're not even Hallmark.
No,
At least Hallmark, yeah, I give them credit because or
they're
Lifetime.
original.
They're
Yeah.
they're original and they're self-aware and they
Yeah.
know they're cheesy, and they do like the KFC rom-com as an ad. I don't know if you ever saw that, right? Where they did a whole rom-com about Colonel Sanders
That's
and
great. I
finding
didn't know about that, but that's
yeah,
awesome.
it's on YouTube, I think. Like Lifetime did it. And it was like who's the guy that was on Saved by the Bell, but now he's doing Entertainment Tonight, or
Oh, I don't know.
Mario Lopez.
Lopez, he got in trouble, didn't he, for saying something?
Yeah, well, he played Colonel Sanders uh in the Lifetime Colonel Sanders, and then it wasn't until he found true love he found the secret recipe or something like that. Like that was the whole thing, and it was an ad, and you just go, I have so much respect for Lifetime for that because
Hmm.
they know exactly what they are,
Yep.
right? But if you try to say, hey, let's make a parody of Christian movies, um, I guess there was an attempt to do one, but it never got distribution. I think it was called Christian Movie. I don't know whatever happened to it. I was really excited. I was like, oh, finally. But
I
but
did
that
hear about this. Yeah.
yeah, but I don't know. I don't ever know what happened to it. Um, and it's because the Christian film industry takes themselves too seriously.
Yeah.
And they're always going to be a laughing stock if
Hmm.
as long as they do that. And I don't think really people care. I don't think the people, because most of the people who invest in Christian film movies invest through nonprofit organizations, right?
No.
So they're
Yeah.
not really looking for a financial return anyway.
Right.
Um, or they're doing it because they just want more Christian movies. A lot of Christian investors in Christian movies invest so their daughter can get an acting gig, right? Like, and that's
Mhm.
part of the requirements of the investment.
Well, doesn't
We've
Sony
had
own them now? Anyway, doesn't Sony own?
no, they were like they bought it and they're like, what the heck is this? And then they sold Pureflix to Great American.
Just get rid of
So they were
that.
like, oh,
Did I buy that?
yeah, yeah, and so
Oh well,
that's pretty much what I was told happened.
that
So I
makes
don't.
sense.
That's just kind of but they do they still own a significant portion. They just gave up majority control, I think, to Great
Right.
American.
Right.
And Great Americans just dived in to the rom-com stuff. To be fair, Bill Abbott's
That's
really good at it.
that's
Like,
a good plan. Yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, they got Candace Cameron Bure,
Hmm.
Bill Abbott started Hallmark. Like they know that.
Right.
And so I like I'm not like I don't think I love cheesy rom-coms.
Hmm.
Like they're great and it serves a purpose. But that can't just be the only thing. When you say this is what a Christian movie is, like
Right.
that's
Right.
and when you reject anything that's outside of that, because that's not a Christian movie. You're lying to the audience, and I don't think they're lying. They know what they're doing.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I think I'm talking about like pre-Great American Pureflix, pre-Sony
Yeah.
Pureflix. They knew that they were just taking money from older women, and
Sure.
trying to get enough subscribers to sell to Sony. That was the plan
That's the
all
name of the
along.
game. Yeah.
But it's created this image in people's minds, even in Christians' mind, that that's what a Christian movie is. And if you go outside of it, the audience gets upset
Yeah.
and freaks out and says, "Hey, you can't do that."
Yeah.
But
It's so upsetting.
but it's like Henry Ford said, they'll always want a faster horse. So the
Yeah.
only way to do it is to really like push everything out, like
Mhm.
on purpose. So fix my mic.
Yeah. I saw your mic there.
So um hopefully that stays. But
Yeah.
but yeah,
We should talk about the genre at some point because, I'm one of those people like I understand the market to a degree to where I don't care whatever people call me. What I just want to be able to do is be authentic as an artist.
yeah,
And so like as long as you're able to do that, nobody can really stop you from doing that. It's just the question of whether the marketplace can kind of like tolerate you and push you out there. And if they will, then maybe you'll make some money. But if they're not, if they won't, and this is where we've been, right? Where we've been is kind of like the Kendricks have kind of like shepherded us forward since Mel Gibson. And then like now the Irwin brothers are shepherding us because they have more of a Hollywood style, so they're being more successful.
yeah,
And but the problem is that we're not really like growing out of our seams. We're not really like expanding our style too much. We're still like in like biopics and stuff like this.
right,
And so we're not really, but see what happens when Angel puts out Sound of Freedom is it's like it's marketed like an action film, right?
yeah,
It's more of a thriller, but it's marketed like an action film and it does gangbusters, right? We're
yeah,
just like, oh, this is a social commentary film.
yeah,
It's talking about something Hollywood doesn't like. So there's kind
yeah,
of like almost like reverse demographics here. There's like a reverse thing where oh hey Hollywood doesn't like it. That means I'm gonna watch this thing, right? And so it's Hollywood's actually marketing the film by now for us. And so this is a good thing. This kind of like almost like this kind of like animosity being built between Angel and Hollywood is something that I really value because I
yeah,
really think that something's being done here. And it's not just Angel, right? It's people, you guys, it's Daily Wire, it's people who are saying, you know what, we're going to challenge you guys. And because what you're doing is leaving a bunch of money on the table. And we see that.
right,
We're not idiots. You're leaving money on the table. You're leaving shelf space for someone else to pick up in theaters and
mm,
you're making some huge, enormous blunders and errors, but because you're a conglomerate, that's some global conglomerate, you don't care if your films lose money.
right,
Like we're not that way, but what we do care about is the culture itself. We do care about the stories. If we could
right,
take Lord of the Rings back from you, we would. We
right,
just don't have the money to do that yet. But what we see is there's product, there's IP, there's real storytelling that we can do and, if we can just sneak it in there, whether it's in the theaters or whatever it is, people will see that there's real art happening still, even though Hollywood doesn't believe in it, even though the pure flixes don't believe in it, right? There's people who believe in it. And so I think people like us are going to be picking up that money on the table that they're leaving. And hopefully they will keep doing that. They'll just keep going their
yeah,
own way and they'll keep leaving shelf space for us to pick up
yeah.
and we can just
Well,
build
that's gonna
IP.
happen. It's just that, you know, with all the money the Angels bringing in, all the money the Daily Wire's got, Irwin Brothers got, they're getting hundreds of millions of dollars.
Hmm.
Um, and the problem is there's not that incubation talent pool to be able to sustain that for any
Right.
long period of time. And also, none of the projects, whether it's The Chosen or Sound of Freedom or whatever, has created long-term cultural impact. Right? So, uh, I don't ever hear anybody talking about The Chosen season 4. very few conversations about that. I don't know anybody that's a diehard fan of that. I know they're out there. I'm just saying, like, in the young male circles that I run in, they're not watching that.
Okay, yeah.
Sound of Freedom did really well, and then they did Sound of Hope,
Yeah.
and
Not so good.
then nobody cared because biopics exist in a single cultural moment. So
Hmm.
these are not these are not films that build lasting IP or even culture. So when I think of culture, I think of like, what's the Christian version of Veggie like where's the Veggie Tales at anymore?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like you would go to the mall, people would have Veggie Tales on their t-shirts. You'd go to Chick-fil-A and get a kid's meal, and they'd give you some sort of Veggie Tale toy or
Right.
a cassette tape with the music on it or a CD with the music on it. We had that with Adventures in Odyssey,
Hmm.
um, right? Especially in the 90s. McGee and Me, everything that focused on the family was doing. Like we had like legitimate culture.
Sure.
Um, so much so now
Could have been better,
that there
but
it could have been better, but it was ours,
hmm.
right? Like
Right.
we had it and it was influential, and so much so now that popular YouTubes are like finding these old VHS tapes with Gerbert and doing commentary on this show
Yeah.
and joking on how cheesy it was.
Uh-huh.
But it was like people don't understand, like those were like culturally dominant institutions.
Yeah.
Um and
They were
and
decent works.
yeah, it's like, I worked at Chuck E. Cheese when I was in high school, and they would play silly songs with Larry. They actually had a licensing deal to play the song
Yeah,
with
that's
Larry
right. They had
at
good
Chuck E. Cheese.
music.
So yeah, so and then now Phil Vischer, who created VeggieTales, is this massive woke leftist who hates
Yeah.
anything with conservatism at all. And he's
Captured.
the one, yeah, he's the one that said, "Oh, we need to be more nuanced about abortion." I'm like, isn't your market kids programming? What is wrong with you? Like,
Yeah.
right? So
It's just how
so
they kill the baby. That's important. It's
yeah,
how.
it's yeah, it's how we got to be nuanced, right? And so it's and so we've lost those institutions. Hollywood comes in, buys up the IP, and I don't know why Phil Vischer turned into such an open leftist, but
Yeah.
my theory is that he just really wants to stay associated with an IP, and
Captured.
if he
Yep.
starts condemning le leftist, he won't be the voice of Bob the Tomato anymore. They'll swap him out. And so uh, that's my theory. Or he's just always been that way, and whatever.
Either way,
But
it's pretty sad. Yeah.
yeah, either way, so the point is we need to build I want to build cultural IP that's the equivalent to like Rick and Morty,
Hmm.
where you see kids wearing Rick and Morty shirts, but that's a show that endorses staunch nihilism.
Yeah.
um right, and so but like what's the Christian version of a Rick and Morty, or even a more broadly it doesn't have to be Christian, even more broadly conservative version, like what of Rick and Morty, like what are we creating that has significant cultural capital outside of you know the the box office,
Yeah. There's little
right?
walled gardens, right? Like Daily Wire. They have the Bent Key, and they're forming this little walled garden of some decent stuff. I don't know if
Yeah,
you're a subscriber to Bent Key.
no,
My
I know
kids,
about it, Mickey.
my kids watch it every Sunday because it's one of
Okay.
the few things I can actually just hit play and then I can just walk out of the room. I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, yeah,
But like generally I can't do that with my kids.
yeah, but
So
Binky still targets the 35-year-old moms. Like that's right. So that's the market.
mostly,
Yeah, mostly. And so, they just basically copied the PureFlix model and said, "Hey, let's make, our own PureFlix thing." But they also do stuff like What is a Woman and this new one that's coming out, and Am I a Racist, which is amazing, right? A lot of that, we talked about Saturday Night Live. A lot of that is because I heard Matt Walsh was actually an improv comic and he couldn't
I can
find
believe it.
anywhere. he couldn't find anywhere to do conservative commentary, conservative comedy, so he went into conservative political commentary instead.
Not a bad
But I think
plan if, if that's true.
not a
It
bad
worked.
plan. And now he's able to actually come out and do this sort of improv stuff, which I think he's great at.
He
And
is.
so I'm excited for those. But again, those are documentaries. Those are going to exist in one moment in time.
Right,
And they're going to be
right.
big hits. But they're not going to be, they're not going to exist outside of that.
Hmm.
So,
You know what I think you guys need to do? I know this is kind of like presumptuous of me to give you advice. I have no idea how the inner workings of your company works. So please forgive me if I come out
I'll
with a
take
lot of
all the advice I can
words.
get.
We were talking about incubators, we're talking about helping artists, we're talking about getting IP. Like I think there's two directions we have to go. There's two directions because how I make plans. I make plan A, plan B, whatever. But
Yeah.
like the two plans to me are the in-person incubator. You need to have
Yeah.
you can't, like SNL, right? You can't really do that improv comedy without being in person.
Right.
So like our churches need to step up, and the churches are going to tell us men to step up. Well, I'm going to tell them to step up. The churches need to step up and support some artists, communities to grow. They
Yeah.
just have to do that.
Well,
Like I'm sorry,
one
I'm
of the
not going to work
things,
for your audio, video, visual team, okay, to
yeah,
point the camera at the preacher. Okay, I'm not going to do that. What I'll do instead is try to make art.
yeah,
And if the pastor will support me and allow me to have 2 hours a week in that room, then maybe I could make some stuff, right? If he'll
yeah,
allow you to have 2 hours in the sanctuary to like make some improv comedy and film it,
yeah,
then it's
yeah,
like now they're like contributing to our community. And
yeah.
if they're not willing to do that, then
I, 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 I think that the church definitely needs to support the artists. I think though there's there's a sort of art that can't be made in a church. And not well, the best way to put that is, there's a difference between clean comedy, let's say Jerry Seinfeld, right? Um,
Mhm.
and church comedy. Those are two separate categories. And
No
a
kidding.
lot of, yeah, and I've spoken to really amazing church comics, and they hate having to do comedy in the church.
It's not
Uh,
easy.
but
Yeah.
yeah, because it has, it has to be made with the approval of the church ladies, right? And so,
But
um,
what did the Mormons do? What did
but
Angel Studios do, right? They're
right,
just like, hey, make
meanwhile,
they
the
make the
church.
veneer of clean comedy, but they've got some offensive stuff.
That's
Like,
right. That's right. And so yeah, Dry Bar is really good for that. But also still all those comics, they're practicing for their Dry Bar routines at CD comedy clubs,
of course,
right?
where else
So
can they practice?
exactly, that's the point. So and that's because comedy clubs have this reputation for comedians are going to come up and they're going to fail and they're going to
They're gonna
bomb.
bomb.
That's
That's just
part of the show. And that's why Kill Tony is like the number one podcast in the country right now, where it's just comics failing for 2 hours straight.
that I've heard
Um,
that as the explanation for how you become a comic is you just got to be good at bombing. Like
yeah, you got to be good at bombing.
if
Yeah,
you
you got
enjoy
to,
bombing, you'll do great, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. And so, but yeah, so so, but I also think like the same thing is true, like a church movie, like the Kendrick brothers do. They will tell you they are making movies in this style and format for this audience. They know
Right.
that's what they do, and they don't want to stray outside of that. And I don't think they should have to.
No.
Their movie started in a church, but then you have, there's so much more kinds of content and stories to be told that fit in that narrative, uh,
Mhm.
within our that are for our audience, that might not necessarily be something church sponsored media
Mhm.
would create. That doesn't mean it's any less evil,
Right.
or any more evil or bad or bad to watch or whatever. It just means the stories are not necessarily conducive to a church environment.
Hmm. Well, I was talking about two plans, remember? Not to
Yeah.
get past what you were saying, but because we're kind of talking about these at least I'm thinking about these two different plans of how to improve our community. And one of them is in person where you're getting to know people and you're building this community together and you're
Yeah.
bombing, right? And you're making mistakes and you're showing some Christian grace to each other. What is that? Oh, grace. Oh yeah, we can do that to artists too. Oh, you didn't know that. Oh, okay. Like we can do that, like Christians can fail and mess up and you can let them continue failing. So a lot of this, obviously, the church needs a different attitude about a lot of this.
Yeah.
Like Bezalel made the temple. He wasn't even a Jewish guy. Like, you know what I
Right.
mean? Like, we needed to like realize that the church does not have to hire Christians everywhere they go. Like, you were talking about the Chosen before and how there was this. Remember how there's this scandal of this guy with the LGBT flag,
Yeah.
the
Right.
camera guy, and everybody went up in arms, and I'm like, have you
Right.
ever worked in LA? You have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and often these things often you can't stop these things. So like
Yeah.
people they get so precious
Well,
about
you
things.
could if you were non-union.
Yes, yes. You
Yeah,
know,
it could be done.
no, it
Um,
can be done for sure.
I think I think the scandal of the cameraman, it's like, okay, you got a guy, he's openly gay. I think the problem was really more so his Instagram was like mocking being on the set of The Chosen as a gay person. And it's like, so
The
he's
other way
like,
around, yeah.
yeah, it's sort of like it's like, don't they have an anti-disparaging clause to work, but
Yeah.
I think you're always going to have those instances where you have people who are working on set who might not be a Christian.
Hmm.
That's fine, but they have to realize, hey, we're making this for a specific audience
Yes.
and we're not going to tolerate behavior just in the same way
Right.
they wouldn't tolerate, like you wouldn't see, I doubt if you made a movie where uh like I doubt, so we're making a movie called The Lesbian and the Lumberjack, and it's
Oh,
about a lesbian who realizes she's not gay, she's never met a real man before. I doubt that guy would want to work on set of that movie. So the way to stop it is just to make movies that repulse them and they don't want to be a part of, just like they make movies that repulse us and we
of
don't want to be a
course.
part
Of
of. And
course.
and and so, but if we're trying to build these just sort of broad, anti-fragile films that don't really
Yeah, for
offend
everybody.
anybody,
Well, that's what we've been
then
doing. Our fleet's been traveling as fast as the slowest vessel,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
the old 65-year-old grandma in the back who's like, I don't like that.
right, yeah.
We
And
can't
so
be listening to
And
that.
so, in regards to your community, one of the things we do at Lore, and we're hoping to ramp up again, is we want to do monthly in-person filmmaker gatherings all over the country. So one in Atlanta, in Florida, or whatever. And we've done it. We've done one in Texas, in LA, several times in Nashville area.
Nice.
And so the plan is just to do that more. And we usually have like whiskey and cigars and just
Ooh,
get to meet everybody and hang out. And
I like that. You get to offend a
that's
lot of people. That's
yeah. Well, our idea is
offend
like
all the
if
right
you
people.
yeah, our idea is like if you're afraid of being around people that drink whiskey and smoke cigars, then you probably have pretty cowardly stories to tell,
Hmm.
that are,
Weak sauce.
the people that aren't afraid to come and show up at those events usually have pretty great stories that they want to tell. And we've met amazing people who work at very high levels in Hollywood that you would recognize their projects and stuff. Just tremendous work.
That's great. I'd
And they all
love to
come to
go.
those events.
I'd
Yeah.
love to
And
go.
so, yeah,
Can I
so
bring my
we'll
pipe?
announce those.
Can I bring a pipe?
You can. Yeah, I actually have my pipe right here, actually. So,
Oh, nice. Yeah, I
yeah.
can't
So,
do cigars. I don't know why. I think
that's totally fine. Yeah.
I
So
like pipes. Yeah.
yeah. So but yeah, man. So that I mean, so I would just encourage all your listeners to subscribe to Lore TV, LOOR.TV. You can get a free 7-day trial, but I'd recommend holding on to it for about 3 to 4 months and watch as
Oh, cool.
content fills up on the platform. And right now we're funding the second episode of Barely Biblical. And every dollar you give to that show is 3x'd. So if you give $5, it counts as 15.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And
That's
so
great.
we're doing that to fund the second episode, the $20,000 that's needed to fund that episode. So
Very cool.
uh, yeah, so that's what we're doing now. And
How do I
I would
find
have
out
all,
about these meetings? How do I find out about you
well,
guys'?
we'll announce them in emails when we're ready to do them.
Okay, so they're for subscribers to find out about it.
No, you can subscribe to the email without being, you can just go on the
Oh, I
website and
didn't know that.
subscribe to our email
Okay.
list. Yeah. But yeah, we'll send them out and I'll post it on my LinkedIn and stuff the next time we do it. So
Okay.
right now we're just like in an investment phase and we're raising money for investment. And then once we get that investment, we'll do some events. So
Very cool. Yeah, just wanted to say before we wrap up, the other part of that thing I think we need to do is develop as much good IP as we can using good writers and good kind of like filmmakers.
yeah,
And so, like that, obviously, that doesn't have to happen in person, but I think there has to be some kind of thing, kind of like what we're doing now, where you could have Zoom meetings that are regular, and you're talking to these screenwriters around the country, and you're asking everybody for their monthly update on how they're doing on their scripts and their IP. And so, I don't know, maybe this is something you do already with your filmmakers, but it's like,
we do have meetings with our current filmmakers all the time, and hope to do that more. And then the main focus right now is just getting content funded on the platform. So
good,
the more content that gets funded on the platform, the easier it is for new subscribers to subscribe because they'll go, oh yeah, there's content on here to watch.
good.
And so that's really the main focus and the main goal. And then we're going to be building apps and all sorts of other stuff as well to expand the reach. And so all that just requires investors who aren't cowards and want to push the industry forward. So
Hard to find, hard to find.
yeah, it's amazing. They're all over the left, you know.
You might
So
need to shake down Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel!
I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind. So,
Well, how do I interview with some of your filmmakers?
uh, email Jason, our chief
Okay.
content officer, and he'll get you in contact. And he would love to have some of our filmmakers on your show. I'm sure.
I need to interview with him anyway because I wanted to talk with him about Passing Period and
About what?
his little short film called Passing Period or something. It's like a high
Oh,
school
passing
film.
period. Passing
Yeah.
period. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the next thing he's working on now. And the whole series takes place in the locker room in the hallway of a
Yeah.
school. So it's just like one scene. Every every scene is a different time during the day in school in that hallway. It's a
I
great
helped
idea.
I invested on his little project, by the way.
Oh, fantastic. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so you have his email and I'm
Yeah.
sure he'll put you in touch with whoever. So
That's great. Thank you so much, Marcus.
yeah,
Like I
he
love
also
talking to people on a
he
real level,
also
like just
worked
being
he
real.
also is working on and worked with Netflix on a project based on Dante's Inferno. So you could have that whole conversation with him
I
since you
did read
referenced.
about that.
I
Yes.
didn't bring it up because I'm not knowledgeable about Dante's Inferno enough to carry a conversation on it. But he literally carries a copy of Dante's Inferno with his Bible in his bag
Love it.
everywhere he goes.
I love it.
So
It's prescient today for sure. You know,
so
we
it
need more of
is.
that.
It is.
All right, brother. Hey, we'll
All
have to
right,
do this again. We'll need to
for
do.
sure.
I'll be emailing you and stuff.
And
So
next time we're in Tampa, I'll let you know and we'll go to Cigar Alley.
I'll be there. I'll bring my little pipe.
All right, man. Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Love you, brother. Bless you.
All right, bye.
Bye.